Near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome.
Absolute format is the best way to own this store. Time to empty those wallets and fill those shelves. Hey, all you mentees, Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And join me today for your advanced look at the Alpha Flight by John Byrne Omnibus from Marvel Comics. So let's go ahead and get started. Before going any further, I do want to thank the folks at Marvel for sending us a copy of this omnibus. This omnibus is due out in the direct market and book market on October 24th or 25th, depending on where you get your books. And speaking of direct market, that's exactly what we're looking at here. This is the direct market cover that's supplied by, of course, the series creator, John Byrne. On the left-hand side is the original printing, and it's also the cover and spine they're going to use for the standard edition, and also supplied by John Byrne. This is from Alpha Flight 1, and this is from the Marvel Age cover. This one was printed in 2016. It was printed at it was a one-off printer. I think it was the Hung Hing printer, and that was in Hong Kong, and this is the iMac printer. Now, we'll be doing a comparison here in a little bit, but first, let's take a look at these together, so you can see the differences in the spines here. It's a Marvel Omnibus, Alpha Flight by John Byrne, and then a shot of the team. Poor Marina. The back of the book. So here's all the covers of Alpha Flight or comics that featured Alpha Flight collected in this omnibus. Down here is the ISBN with Marvel, rated T, and the cover price. Now, the retail price is $125. It was $100 in 2016, but it's $125 now. Now, it looks like the pictures of the covers themselves are a tad bit smaller over here. They're using a different font than what they used here to tell you what's collected, and then the ISBN is obviously smaller there. Now, let's check them out underneath the dust jacket, because there is a difference. But let's look at the flaps here from the new printing. Heroes of the Great White North, as they were known. And then the creators here on the right-hand side. Just a little bio on them. And this is the original printing right here. So very similar. But underneath the dust jacket is where we're seeing the differences. The original printing has the cover right there to Marvel Age. And then the cover to issue number 12 right there, but it looks like it's got new colors, and then that spine is similar, whereas this new printing, it's not really a team group shot, but it's more of the handbook, the guide, and putting it together, because you could probably tell for people that have read this before, there's two Auroras there, so yeah, pretty interesting. And then of course the sizes, the heights are a little bit off. Now, I haven't done an overview of this. I would have done a retro view, but eventually they reprinted it, so here's going to be my overview. I am going to open this up and talk about the stories collected in here without going too much into spoiler territory, like deep spoilers or anything like that. But I do have to talk about the pitch of what or who Alpha Flight is, and then we'll do a comparison to the original printing. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at this book. Okay, let's go ahead and crack this open and talk about the origins of Alpha Flight, because everything you need to know about the beginning of Alpha Flight is included in this omnibus. And it's interesting that they decided to call it Alpha Flight by John Byrne. I was hoping with the reprint we would get a Volume 1, just Alpha Flight Volume 1. So we could have the Bill Mantlo and eventually Femi Nicieza and, of course, Scott Lobdell to finish out the omnibus format. So we can have, I think it would take 3, maybe if they want to push it 4, to finish out Alpha Flight. But regardless, let's go ahead and take a look in here. Alpha Flight, here's all the writers: Chris Claremont, John Byrne, Roger Stern, Tom DeFalco, the pencilers, John Byrne, Sal Buscema, Steve Ditko, and those are just some, of course. Inkers, Terry Austin, but John Byrne honestly inked a lot of his stuff too. The colorists, Andy Yankees and Glynis Wayne, and George Russo's, and the lettering right here, the legendary Joe Rosen, and the assistant editors and editors at the time, cover art by John Byrne, Terry Austin, and Avalon's Matt Milla. And then your table of contents, very, very Canadian colors here that are using for that. It looks like even the red around here with the white box on the framing of the covers. It's what they did with the first one. Of course, this is the Canadian flag right here. But here is your table of contents. What's collected in this particular omnibus. And speaking of what's collected in this omnibus, let's go ahead and talk about that. Because this particular book collects, starting off with X-Men, when it was just adjectiveless X-Men, 109, 120 to 121, 139 and 140. And then, of course, the title will change to Uncanny later on. Actually, just a couple of issues after that. And then Incredible Hulk 272 and 313, Annual number 8. Machine Man number 18, Marvel 2-in-1, 83 and 84. Alpha Flight 1 through 29, finally. And X-Men and Alpha Flight, the 2-issue miniseries, X-Men Alpha Flight 1 and 2 from 1998. And then material for Marvel Team Up, Annual number 7. In the very first story that's collected in here, it is the introduction of Weapon Alpha, who's after Weapon X, and that is, of course, Wolverine. He's a Canadian superhero that is working for Department H, and they wanted to pretty much build the background of who Wolverine was before he joined the X-Men. And this is a really cool issue because this ties heavily later on into an ongoing issue of Alpha Flight, so you'll remember a lot of the same scenes because they reuse the same artwork just with different colors. But it is James Hudson right here going as the Vindicator and then eventually the Guardian that is fighting Wolverine to bring him back to Canada. And, of course, the X-Men step in and defeat him. Now, when he comes back, he's like, look, I failed the first time, but this time around, I've got my own team. And we're going to take down the X-Men one by one. And sure enough, they do, because this is a two-parter where the X-Men get to fight this Canadian superhero team. Although they don't see them as superheroes, they see them as nemesis during this time. So we have, again, the Vindicator, James McDonald Hudson, he's back. But this time around, he brought some friends. And he brought with him, I love this character, this is Snowbird, this is Corporal Anne McKenzie, who has the powers to turn into animals of the Great White North. Then we have the twins right here, the mutant characters, North Star and his sister Aurora. But that's not their real names, and I'm sure I'm going to butcher their names, but this is Jean-Paul Biabeau, sorry, and then his sister is Jean-Marie Biabeau. I will leave it at that. But both of them have the abilities, light powers and speed for the character of North Star. And it's really interesting when you get into the series how they have their own lives going on. We have this gentleman right here. This is Sasquatch, but this is Dr. Walter Langowski. And you may be familiar with him from the pages of The Immortal Hulk if you read it. His origin story has ties to that of Bruce Banner's. And then you have Dr. Michael Two Youngman, who goes by the name of Shaman, who is the magician, the sorcerer of the group. Now, those are the characters that appear in this particular issue of X-Men. And I love the way that this is mapped because, yes, I think some people would see this as, that's a little too much, but I love the fact that if you're just interested in collecting Alpha Flight, this is the book for you because it has all the early appearances, like the Hulk fighting Sasquatch here. They don't send the whole team, they just send Sasquatch to take care of the Hulk in this particular annual. And then we have material here from Fantastic Four 220, where I guess John Byrne was trying to make the Guardian happen or Alpha Flight happen, and I love it because he has a fond love of these characters. And then we get to one of the best issues right here. I love these issues of Uncanny X-Men, no matter how many times they're reprinted. And yes, these are found in Uncanny X-Men Omnibus Volume 2. But this is the two-parter where they go up north, and Wolverine for the first time wears his brown and gold outfit. And there's a lot of speculation as to why. I don't think Claremont ever came out and said, or Byrne, but I think it's just understood that it was in honor of Jean and to switch things up. But when Nightcrawler and Wolverine go up north, this time you get a more of a background on some of these characters, including the first appearance of this young lady right here. This becomes an important character later on, but as of right now, this is the wife of James Hudson. This is Heather. And her and Wolverine have a past. They know each other, just like James and Wolverine have a past, and they've known each other. So we have that appearance through here. We have I believe this is the Machine Man issue right here, number 18, that collects the appearance of North Star and Aurora with Sasquatch, even though the coloring, because I remember getting this because I was collecting everything mutant related, was off on the covers here. That is not their hair. And that one's written by Tom DeFalco. Then we have the Marvel 2-in-1 issues, but the way they would do it is they would say, okay, we'll have the Thing team up with the Sasquatch, and it will continue. So it'll be a two-parter story. And then in the next part, what we'll do is we'll bring in all of Alpha Flight. So part one will just be the Marvel team up between the Thing and Sasquatch, and the next one will be the Thing and Alpha Flight, which is exactly what they did here. And the Marvel 2-in-1s were just introducing people to these newer characters, these obscure characters that Marvel had, and the much beloved Blue-Eyed Thing was just such a big seller that he was the one that kept the series going. And it went on for a lot of issues, kind of like the Marvel team-up books. Then we have the Bill Mantlo issue right here, where you may remember that character right there, Rocket Raccoon, is creator Bill Mantlo, where the Hulk gets pretty much thrown back into the Earth and fights off Sasquatch and the Wendigo. And then we finally get Alpha Flight number 1. So we are at 239 pages before we actually get into Alpha Flight. This is the cover right here for um, the standard edition, but these are the original colors here. And this story is called Tundra. Now here we meet a couple of new characters, and I love the fact that they foreshadow so many things like Omega or Beta Flight and the Gamma Flight characters that play bigger roles later on. And let me see if I still have this in my head. So there's Puck, Marina, and Box. That's what they were named. I did not name them. That's Flashback. I think that's supposed to be Jeffries here, and the character of Smart Alec, and Diamond Lil, and then Wild Child. Those characters come back later on and play a big part in the demise of one of these characters. So this is introducing you to each of these characters. It's a giant-size issue. You get more of the background as to how their powers exactly work and who they are. Puck, you're introduced to Puck in here. I love that character, and I can tell that John Byrne also loved writing him. You know, he's a small guy, but he is super strong and has a lot of agility. And we're also introduced to Marina, who has ties to the Atlantean realm, but there's a lot more to her than that. She's got a big secret. And what happens in this, how they kick it off, is Department H has decided to stop funding the project of Alpha Flight. And they were like, hey, sorry, you're all fired. Good luck. You can keep the suit and some of your military clearance, but that's about it. But when they fight off this big creature known as Tundra, these group members decide, you know what, we did good. Let's just keep fighting the good fight. We will remain Alpha Flight. Now, what's really cool is after issue number 1, the backup stories from issues 2 and 3 and 5 through 11 are done in this format. They're collected here. So what John Byrne was doing, so you could get a little more knowledge on these characters that he's been building up, is he did origin issues for each of them. And not issues, I'm sorry, they're just pages. So telling you a background story on Heather and James, how they met, and about Michael right there. And you find out that he has a daughter who will play a big part later on, and how he uses his powers exactly. And then, of course, the character of Snowbird, and how she has a life of her own. And all of these were collected all the way up to issue 11 as just backup features. But in here, they're collected right after issue number 1. I think that's pretty smart, right? So they're not broken down, and you're having to stop reading a continuing story in issue number 3 and 4 that goes into the Fantastic Four because it crosses over to go and read a little bit about Sasquatch. But I thought that was a good idea. Now we have issue number 2, that's what they use for the spine here. So Marina, remember what I said, has a mystery, and this is where it all kind of begins, and it has ties to Namor. There's the Master of the World, and then we have the crossover with the Fantastic Four as of this issue. I love that cover, just the use of the contrast, black and white, and what John Byrne was doing during this time. he was really in his experimental phase. Like, there's so many really cool things, and one very important issue I'm about to show you here in a bit, where some people would look at it and go, that's kind of lazy, but to me as a kid, I'm like, that's brilliant. Why hasn't anybody done that enough? And that's the Snowblind issue for those that have read it, which we'll look at in a minute. But look at this. Like, this is Puck just jumping out of the corner box, and that is just amazing. And the other amazing thing was that during this time, he was also working on the Fantastic Four, writing, drawing, inking, sometimes lettering, sometimes coloring. That man was insane. Now you get to find out a little bit about Puck and his backstory and how tragedy just shaped who he was. And this is the Snowblind issue. This is the kind of standalone issue featuring Anne and just the amount of powers that she has. But during this particular issue, there is a blizzard, and this is what I was talking about. And it's nothing but white pages, like you're seeing it through her perspective, for about 4 or 5 pages. Aurora gets a deeper dive in this particular issue when you find out that she has a split personality, and one of them is this shy and innocent type of girl, and the other one is more dominating and taking charge. And that comes into play later on when you get to see her in her new costume. You're introduced to the character of Nemesis, who could be part of the whole Gamma Flight, or maybe there could be an Omega Flight. This is another one of the instances where they're collecting an appearance by Walter right here when he's trying to help out the Fantastic Four. And speaking of Fantastic Four, the Thing steps in the next issue to fight off against the Super Skrull with Sasquatch. Now, I'm not going to go through every issue. For anybody that has read this, I think one of the most biggest impactful issues happens in the first year that John Byrne was writing and drawing this. And for us reading it at the time, holy crap, I was just shocked. I was like, how did they... What? Yeah, it was crazy, but it's all collected in here. You can find out for yourself what I'm talking about. This is the Marvel Team-Up book, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. This is the annual with Spider-Man during his black costume era, teaming up with some of the members of Alpha Flight. And by now you'll see some members take a bigger role, like Box comes in and kind of plays a bigger role. Marina goes away for a while, but then she keeps coming back. Aurora goes away for a while, and then Heather steps up and becomes a newer character. She becomes the new Guardian and ends up leading the team for a while. Shaman's daughter, Talisman, takes a big role here. And there's this really cool panel I want to go back and show you. Because to me, as a kid, it creeped me out. But it's in the fight with the Gamma Flight characters. So it happens right here where Smart Alec takes Shaman's bag. And Shaman's like, no, don't look in there. And it just zooms in. And of course, it's just one drawing, right? They're just blowing up the image. But I love how dramatic this was. And the narration is just so awesome about Michael warning him and what his father told him about the bag. Don't look directly into the bag because you'll be looking into the unknown, and nobody's supposed to look into infinite. And it's just beautifully worded and so creepy. As a kid, those 3 frames creep me out. This is the fight with Diablo right there. Aurora getting her hair cut, but also her personality change. Okay, I wanted to come back and talk about this issue because I said I would go back and revisit it. So in Alpha Flight number 17, what they do, and this is really cool, again, experimental, but I dig it, is that John Byrne decides to tell the story from the side of the Canadian superheroes, right? Not that Wolverine isn't, but we got to see the X-Men side of things right after they were coming back from their Phoenix adventure for the first time. But then both stories eventually line up. So you see a lot of the same panels, just with different colors, because this was a different colorist that was working on this book as opposed to this book. But you're going to see a lot of the same pages and the same dialogue. So that was really cool. I'm glad that they did, because I remember owning this issue and I'm like, wait a second, that looks familiar when I went back and got this issue of X-Men 109. But the art, similar to the art at the beginning. And then, of course, the way it ends is different because we're looking at the Canadian superhero side of things. Even some of the fight is a little bit different too, the way that it ends. So, like, for example, this issue here ends with the X-Men are like, oh man, he got away. But in here, you get to see exactly where James ends up flying to in that flashback. Not every character that was introduced through these pages was a winner, that's for sure. And this is the X-Men and Alpha Flight two-issue miniseries right here with Chris Claremont and Paul Smith reuniting for this team up. And there's some big things that happens here. There is the beginning of what a lot of people thought was North Star, because North Star came out in the 90s when it was unheard of that there were gay characters in comics, right? It wasn't in your face about it. It was a big deal. I remember articles of when North Star came out, and they were horrible articles, like things I have no idea how those people, and these were at like some reputable newspapers. And as a kid, I remember reading that. I'm like, man, this they think this is the worst thing that's happened to comics. But anyway, but there were some small little hints about that through here because, of course, editors, and at the time they had to abide by what was going on. You had to abide by the editors, and the editors were like, well, no, you can't make him gay. But Claremont and Byrne always wanted to do that. And then when the character finally had his chance to come out, and that wasn't like, oh my gosh, 106, I think? Yeah. So it was a while. This is one of my favorite issues because, again, felt like John Byrne was just experimenting phase here, where they go to the nether realm to go and retrieve a soul of somebody. You can find out for yourself. But the way that the nether realm looks, it's all in black and white, so you appreciate that John Byrne goodness. Wow, just the amount of details. Beautiful, beautiful. In what ends up happening eventually, John Byrne and Bill Mantlo decide to kind of switch books. So Bill Mantlo during this time, because you saw the Incredible Hulk book, was writing the Incredible Hulk, and he was with Mike Mignola. And what happens after the Secret Wars 2 tie-in with the Beyonder is that John Byrne went over to the Incredible Hulk and just wrote it for a few issues before he left. But Bill Mantlo stuck on Alpha Flight for a long time, and here he is. This is his first full issue, taking over the book with a crossover with his previous issue of the Incredible Hulk. And that was going to be the new creative team. So Mignola stuck around just for a little bit, but Bill Mantlo stuck around writing the book for a while. This is the 1998 series of X-Men and Alpha Flight. This one's by Ben Rabb and John Cassaday. And it's just another team up that takes place in the past between, I believe it's issue 6 and 7. If I'm not mistaken, I think they tell you here. Yes, this takes place around Alpha Flight 5 and 6. I was off by 1, 2. What are you going to do? But it was just 2 issues, and again, taking place in the past with that new artwork. And this is Cassaday before, of course, he did I Am Legion or things like Planetary or Astonishing X-Men. Now, in the back is where you're going to find the Marvel Age. Oh, I had it backwards. The Marvel Age is what's the direct market cover. I really thought that was issue number 1. No, issue number 1 is the classic Out of the Way Heroes. Here comes Canada's Super Team. So this is Marvel Age. I did an overview of that. These are articles and interviews with what exactly Alpha Flight is, the ongoing series. You have the Comic Buyer's Guide art right here. This is a poster by John Byrne. This is the same material that was in the original printing, but I've never done an overview of it, so I did want to showcase it. Covers when John Byrne went back to Alpha Flight, and this is what they took. This is from the Marvel Guide, or I'm sorry, the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, and that's what they used for here, for the cover art. And then little boxes right here telling you the characters' names and their first appearance. Master of the World, original page art. I wish these were in full size, like splash pages. And then classic X-Men that featured Alpha Flight and those classic characters. The X-Men Alpha Flight one-shot, or I'm sorry, the 2-issue series trade paperback. This is the Asgardian Wars trade paperback, which also collected, I think it was the New Mutant Special and X-Men Annual number 9. And then premiere hardcovers here. I forgot there was an Alpha Flight Classics. There were a series of 3 trade paperbacks, and then I think it got canceled, if I'm not mistaken. And then the back covers, and another Asgardian crossover hardcover. And then the Marvel Universe by John Byrne Omnibus cover there. And sheets. Okay, let's take a look at the binding, and then we'll do a comparison. 1,248 pages, and again, printed at the iMac printer. Here's what the eye looks like. It's sewn binding. And as far as the paper stock, there is a little bit of bleed through coming from the opposite pages, like in this particular page. I guess I could just show you Snowblind. That might be the perfect example of how much bleed through. Let's go ahead and find that issue. So yeah, let's use this as an example so you can see some of the bleed through coming from the opposite side. Whenever it's white or light pages, that's when the bleed through you're going to see the most. And we'll do a comparison to see what it looks like in the original printing. And just to showcase how the book lays over, we're looking at one of the early issues here. You do have some minimal gutter loss. So if you want to see the whole thing, you got to hold it down just to see what's in there, but there is some gutter loss. Okay, let's do a quick comparison to the original printing. We have the original printing over here on the left-hand side and the new printing. This is the one from 2016. And black end sheets right there. The Alpha Flight by John Byrne title. And then your table of contents that start on the right. Colors look a little darker over here in the new printing. And kicking it off with that particular issue of X-Men 109. And let's see here. Let's look at some of the... Yeah, this is perfect. So as far as the paper stock, I want to say it's maybe just a little bit thinner than this one over here. And again, this is one of the one-off printers. But definitely the colors are more vibrant in the new printing as opposed to this original printing here. You can see the dark reds. Yeah. So this is just a little bit darker and a little more vibrant at times. Let's look at something like this. Yeah, like Wolverine's costume really pops. And it could honestly just be the paper stock that they're using. And just to kind of show you the bleed through happening, both printings have it. So it's not exclusive to this one. This is the way the book lays over. And as far as the way it lays over, it looks almost about the same, honestly, as far as the gutter loss, how much gutter loss there is. Maybe a little more over here than over in the original printing, just a little bit. But again, the bleed through whenever there's light colors or whites, it's happening on both of them. It's a little more noticeable in the new printing, but not by much. But then again, that's probably due to the thickness of the paper stock. And just one more comparison here to show the way the book lays over. So again, the color's a little more vibrant, a little less gutter loss over here, but honestly it's very, very similar, and still a little bit of bleed through from both of them. But that's it. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this omnibus, don't forget to check out our sponsors.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltscomicshop.com, and you can use the code nearmintcondition at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ding!
cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content, the page count, and build of this book. Let me know in the comments down below if you plan on picking it up, if you have the original printing, or if you've never read Alpha Flight, or if you've never heard of Alpha Flight. Hope I was able to answer some questions you may have had. But if you have any more questions, leave them down below. Don't forget to smash that like button on the way out. Everyone, stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.